to. Sorry guys, I'm trying to make sure I keep the lives a little different. Hey Lynn. Lynn, you've been on with me all day. Thank you for staying with us. Hello, David. I'm going to add you on. Okay. Lynn, we need to get you to lead some of the lives. Uh-oh. Hopefully, okay. There we go. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing well.
You've been hanging with us all day too.
Little bit.
We're just gonna wait for Mr. Richard Rowe to jump on. Thank you for joining us, Brian, Keith Harris, Matthew Mentors, Garzawa Campo. Thank you for joining us, Jack Drum. So I restarted the live because I wanted to kind of keep them separate, so that way when I upload them to YouTube, I'm also going to leave a link in our bio so that you can go through and see the different YouTube videos and watch them whenever you can. Black Mental Health Alliance did an Instagram live. We've been on all day talking about different mental health topics, and really so we can celebrate the last day. Oops, Siri thought I was talking to her. So that we can celebrate the last day of Mental Health Awareness Month, and just making sure that we're talking about those topics that aren't that readily talked about, so that we can learn from each other and have some more tools in our toolkit to deal with different crises, different if you're someone who just went through a trauma, we hope to be a resource for you to connect with a resource and referral database. At Black Mental Health Alliance, we don't provide therapy. We do connect to therapists, psychiatrists, and when you connect to our database, either by sending an email, info@blackmentalhealth.com, you can call or text our resource and referral specialist, Cheryl Maxwell. She is
I'm sorry.
Wow, Siri really thinks I'm talking to her. I'm gonna put her phone number in the chat. It's 443-827-6732, and you can call or text that number to connect with a therapist. We also have a membership component to our organization where you can become members, support the work that we're doing, and our training division. That's what Richard Rowe is over, and you can connect with him to host a training for your facility, to do a consultation. He has amazing trainers. So you met Dr. Adam, Dr. Bruce. David is one of our excellent trainers that are really making sure that these healing principles are going to our mental health providers and regular lay people like myself, so that we can help be that change in our community also. And so with that, I know we're waiting for Richard to come on. Mr. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Look, you were upside down and everything before.
I think we good now.
Okay. So I know Richard was going to introduce you. Can you just tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing now?
Wow, I don't know how much time we have. So David Miller, I always rep Baltimore. I hail from the great city of Baltimore, Maryland, affectionately known as Tubman City after Harriet Tubman. Have been living in Washington, D.C. for the past, 8 years. Have had a long-standing relationship with the Black Mental Health Alliance that probably goes back 20 years. Just a fan of the work and the ongoing training and technical assistance for the mental health provider community, as well as the amazing work that you guys do to educate people around whether it's mental health awareness, access to treatment, but to just look at the larger landscape as it relates to mental health. So everybody knows me knows that I have a very, very interesting story. But I am a writer by trade, and most people across the country know me for my curriculum, Dare to Be King, What If the Prince Lives, which was a curriculum that I designed to really be able to provide healing circles, non-clinical healing circles, initially for middle and high school age Black males. And the curriculum is really focused on many of the challenges that I faced as a preteen or teenage male, you know, growing up in Baltimore City. When I was 11, one of my best friends blew his brains out in front of me playing a game called Russian Roulette. And then when I was 19 years old, I was a student at Morgan State. My best friend was at Morehouse. He had come home during summer vacation. Some guys tried to rob us. We didn't have the money they wanted. We were on the corner of North and Maryland Avenue. For folks in the building who are familiar with West Baltimore, the guys robbed us. Again, we didn't have the money they wanted. They started shooting. I lived. My best friend died. And so that was August 11th, 1989. I remember it. We talk a lot about trauma, but I remember it as if it happened yesterday. And so my work has really been propelled by both a combination of witnessing tragedy, but at the same time realizing that I couldn't lay in it.
Yeah.
That I had to get the kind of, you know, healing and support that I need to be able to advance my work, but to just be a healthy Black man in society who doesn't suffer in silence. And so a lot of the work that Richard and I do is really around getting Black men to open up and to be vulnerable and to consider mental health and the many kinds of you know, the many aspects, if you will, as it relates to mental health. I'm also a children's book author. But one of the things that Richard and I were going to talk about, dovetailing on what Donita, my good friend, talked about. Donita is her primary caregiver of her mother. I am the primary caregiver of my dad. And being a primary caregiver of a parent is, although it is difficult, it is magical. You know, before my dad was diagnosed with, you know, major depression and dementia, I was on the road. I was in about 120 cities a year, lecturing, book talks, book signings, as well as, you know, there was, anybody who knows me knows that I, like Donita, I love spending time, you know, in Africa. I'm going to be headed to South Africa in a couple of weeks. But a lot of that had to come to a screeching halt because my mom had died and then my brother died. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up becoming the primary, you know, caregiver of my dad. And what ends up happening is, Donita talked about earlier, a lot of times Black caregivers suffer in silence, and people don't necessarily hear from Black caregivers. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to connect you guys with Donita, because our stories are very similar. Our lives changed when we were thrust in the position of being a primary caregiver for our parents. So I do a lot of writing, you know, finishing up my PhD at Morgan State. Took off about 4.5 years to finish up my PhD at Morgan in the School of Social Work. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I'll defend in August. And so that's a kind of a thumbnail sketch of who I am.
Yep, Richard, we were just doing introductions. David had introduced some of what he's doing and his background, his connection with Black mental health, which I didn't realize spanned 20 years.
He's been with us for a while. He's been with us for a minute, no question. We're on this journey of trying to do what, David? WIN, brother.
Do
to
we want to
win.
win? If Richard and I know you just getting settled in, Richard. I mean, what it comes down to for Black folks and other folks that are listening, if we want to win, we're gonna have to radically do things differently. I was reading a story this morning, Richard and Roxana, about an 11-year-old boy in the District of Columbia that had been arrested for 5 armed robberies. And so, if we're gonna win, we need to do things radically different, and mental health and wellness, addressing the trauma, and not just talking about training folk on trauma informed, but leaning deeply into the hell that our community is experiencing. Because anytime you have 11-year-olds and 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds who are violent offenders at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, both boys and girls, it speaks to a community that is absolutely out of control, that needs to place healing at the forefront of everything that we do.
That's right. That's right. Well, brother, we always talk about, that's the question you always put forth to me whenever we call each other. You will even call me out of nowhere and say, Richard, do we want to win? And it's a critical question. And you also share or tell me all the time that Superman ain't coming to save us. No one is coming to save us. Mm-hmm. So if we are not committed to our own salvation, liberation, elevation, then we are not going to make it to the promised land, our promised land. Because if we're waiting for folks who have put us in these situations, conditions, programmed to dislike each other, to hate on each other, to go at each other, that's what they have basically taught us to do. And we have bought into that narrative, to that frequency dial that Brother Bruce Purnell tells us that we got to change the frequency dial. Mm-hmm. if we want to win. And lastly, because again, like everybody else that's been on these brief conversations, man, you all's resumes speak to you all's commitment to our community and to our people, and your work ethic. I could just talk for minutes, David, on your work ethic, brother. I know what you're doing. I know know all your competing demands. And we're going to talk a minute about what Donita Brown, our last guest, talked about for a minute about your caregiving experiences with your dad. Because not a lot of Black men are known for caregiving. Not a lot of Black men are giving credit for caregiving, but there's a sizable number of Black men caregiving. Yes. And the research is now pointing to that. And as we have these conversations, then we are going to realize that as you have lifted up the important role that fathers play and have played and are playing, in spite of the statistics that point otherwise, at least there is, research and folk like you who continue to really point us to the information, statistics that says that we are doing important work, good work, life-saving work that we've got to lift up, elevate, and share. So, I mean, Roxana talked about, you mentioned some of the things that you are currently doing, but you are also an author. You are the founder and president of Dare to Be King. You've developed a curriculum for Black boys. You have basically written how many children's books now, David? Is it 7, 8? What is it now?
Maybe 9.
It's a number of books.
I just dropped a new children's book, Richard, over the weekend, man.
Right, yeah, right. I meant to comment. I meant to share my joy for you, man, and my honor and celebrate you for being consistent and being persistent in putting in front of our children, especially, life-saving, life-affirming books about our ancestors, about those folks who basically have paved the path for us and who are have lifted up, the plays that will allow us to win. If we only knew, and you are helping to bring that kind of answer to the question, if we only knew about Ida B. Wells, if we only knew about Toussaint Louverture, if we knew about these gifted and talented, experts, man, iconic, genius level experts, man, that have come before us and are still some with us today, many with us today, we would have the plays to win, brother. But we got to read the playbook. Got to come early to practice, got to stay late sometimes, you got to read the playbook, and then you got to know who your enemies are, who your opponent, the plays that he's bringing, so that you can counter his plays with our plays in order to win. So again, we don't have that much time for my commentary. This is all about you and about you sharing your expertise, your knowledge, and your experiences. First, man, let's talk about caregiving for your father. Talk a little bit about that, because I realized, David, that again, 39% of caregivers are men. Didn't know that.
Yes.
And the number of caregivers in the Black community who are men are also at significant levels. So I'm quite sure that probably will catch everybody by surprise. We know, though, that caregiving is generally a female, perceived to be for females only. But I know that I have been involved with caregiving, primary caregiving in one instance, but secondary caregiving for a sister and for a father, for my father, man. But talk, David, for a few minutes about your caregiving experiences and what it's about, what you are, why you are doing it, what's you're up against, and what you do in order to really heal. I mean, engage in self-care yourself in order to do this work, man.
So once again, man, thank you. Super excited, coming on the heels of Donita Brown, good friend of mine. Glad I was able to make the connection. My story is like Donita's, just in terms of being thrust into the caregiving role. Didn't really see it coming. My mom had passed away, and then my brother passed away March of 2021. My brother died of stomach cancer. By the time he found out, he was already stage 3. And so I was thrust into the role of being the primary, caregiver for my dad, who was diagnosed with, dementia and major depression. And so, as I said in a piece that I'm working on, was writing earlier, is that while it has been difficult, it has been magical, because my dad is the man who made it possible for me to enter, this world. And so for me to not take care of my dad, given all that him and my mom did, raising 2 boys in the heart of West Baltimore, I felt it not robbery for me to alter my schedule, put some of my hopes, dreams, and aspirations on the back burner, to be a caregiver for my dad. It's been an interesting journey, Richard. And I don't think that a lot of people realize how many Black men are actually caregivers of their parents. And let me tell you a quick story. So last summer, I was in Ghana. I was at the University of Ghana for 6 weeks working on this Fulbright project. And, every night I'm hanging out with this brother. Me and him are rooming together at the University of Ghana. We just chopping it up. It might have been week 2 when I found out that he is the primary caregiver of his mom. So shout out to Brother Jared Grant. I don't know if he's in the building. He is a PhD student at Clark Atlanta University. But we were literally at University of Ghana, had been living together for a couple of weeks doing this Fulbright work. And we found out that we were both caregivers for our parents. And we started kind of shopping stories, and again, beginning to realize that there are so many Black men who are caregivers. But what ends up happening, Richard and Andrea, like in so many other instances, Black men, oftentimes we tend to suffer in silence. So there are folk that we know, Black men that we know, that are caregivers who just don't say anything because they're suffering in silence. And as Donita talked about, kind of the day-to-day nuances of being a caregiver, and the sacrifice, and the fact that you got to put all of those things that you put on in your basket on hold, are things that tend to happen when you are a caregiver. But I just think it's magical. I think it's beautiful. In this book I'm writing next year, I'm writing a major essay about what it's like taking care of my dad. And again, this is the man that made sure I got into this world, as well as provided me. My father provided me with a tremendous work ethic. And a lot of people, for most people, you spend the day with me, you're going to be like, this dude got an extra. I always tell people I got an extra gear right? Because I might write, I mean, already, Richard, and I think I've shared this with you, I've already, in the last 6 months, I've already written 12 more children's books that I'm just going to stagger the release, and they'll be edited. I'm finishing up my dissertation. Got a bunch of writing projects in front of me. But at the same time, when we talk about self-care, as you know, man, I go fishing. Fishing is part of my therapy. Outside of having a therapist, licensed clinical therapist, I have 12 fishing rods. And so I went fishing on Monday. And so fishing and hiking and camping are the things that kind of sustain me and keep me. Richard, you and I both are unofficial, jazz and blues aficionados, along with Dr. Bruce Purnell, who was on earlier. So for me, getting in the bathtub and throwing on some Coltrane or some Monk or some Latin jazz, again, those are the kinds of things that I do from a self-care perspective. But it is definitely not easy being a caregiver for a parent.
Right. And again, you lift up something in terms of Black men taking on this role, because I was reading as I was preparing for this conversation with you, man, that there are some studies that point to the fact that, our group, Black men, exhibit the highest mortality rate and the worst health profile compared to other racial ethnic groups of men, due to both structural and interpersonal racism. So that contributes to the small number, and it's not small number, but the lack of more men stepping up to the plate, because we are, as you indicated, suffering in silence, and we are not basically taking care of ourselves, even though our parents are living longer, and that's a reality for everybody out there. We're living longer. And so everybody's going to basically, be confronted with this decision. And you have basically, you and Donita, powerful presentation by Donita as well. When we first met her, Andrea and I were just moved, and amazed by what she has done in a short period of time to really lift this topic up. So again, shout outs to you for connecting us to her, because again, it's one of those relationships that will be enduring because of the work that she's doing, and for the topic, that we better hurry up and do what we tend to always do, either try to catch up and be left behind, because you got to run faster in order to catch up, or we always be in reactionary mode.
Yeah.
And reactionary mode means what, David? Economically and psychologically, what does it mean to be in reactionary mode when we're talking about this very important topic, Black caregiving?
Yeah, Richard, you make a really interesting point, and I don't have the data in front of me, but a lot of parents are outliving their children.
That's right.
And particularly when we think about Black men, I've had friends who are Black and male. Many of my friends have succumbed. I just turned 55 a couple months ago. Many of my Black male friends have already succumbed to diabetes, heart attacks, and strokes under 55 years of age. And so it's a very interesting phenomenon when parents are outliving, their children. But again, there's just so many, critically important conversations that we got to have. And I'm glad that the Black Mental Health Alliance is bold enough to put this issue front and center. I never thought I would end up being a caregiver, for my dad. Donita never thought that she would end up being a caregiver, for her mom. And I just want folks to know that are listening, who have older parents. Because naturally your parents will be older than you, but this is something that all of us are going to have to, come to grips with. We got to start having courageous conversations with our parents about wills, about power of attorney, both medical and legal and financial. We can't wait until mom and dad or grandmom or auntie is laid up somewhere in a nursing home to then begin to have, these critical conversations about what is your parents' care going to look like. And so once again, and Donita and I don't know if she mentioned it because I was in and out, Donita and I are going to be working on an anthology. We're going to be doing a book about the Black caregiving tradition, because there's so many Black folk across the country who are primary caregivers for their parents. We're just not talking about it. You're not going to read about it in AARP or any of the other publications or periodicals that really look at aging in society. Black folks are not part of that discussion when we talk about caregiving. And so we want to do a book. It'll probably come out toward the end of 2024, where we want to highlight, stories and reflections of caregivers. And some of those folks will be people that are currently caregiving. There'll probably be some folks who have cared for their parents and mom and dad have passed on. Richard, I just met a woman a couple of months ago. She's caring for both her parents and two of her aunts. And they had to purchase a new home to kind of retrofit it for all of these sick elders that her and her husband are taking care of. So again, I'm just a caregiver for my dad. Imagine if I'm caregiving for my dad, my mom, and then maybe one or two other relatives in the family. And so that is the landscape. And we all know that a lot of times it usually falls on one sibling to be the primary caregiver. Folk are always like, I got your back, whatever you need. But in terms of the day-to-day, we all know that a lot of folks ain't showing up, man.
Right.
In our own families.
Right. So, David, I mean, it's the limited time that we have. What do you? I mean, you may have basically shared this already in your comments, but the greatest challenge for you has been what? Is it time? Is it money? Is it all the above? Is it everything that goes with taking care of someone who can't take care of themselves? I know that my parents, my father in particular, had dementia. So I know what that struggle is like. My mom just left, with a physical, challenge that, again, we had to really try to help her in so many ways. But, dealing with the mental health aspect of caregiving, a father or mom with dementia, what for you has been the greatest challenge and what has been the greatest joy?
And I see Roxanne has a hand up. For me, Richard, the greatest challenge was I had to slow down. That I had to put some things on the back burner. Like, Richard, some of the international trips and projects that I have abroad, like Donita. Donita and our story is somewhat similar. I had to put some stuff on the back burner. And so, the biggest challenge has been me.
Okay.
I mean, of course, we could always use $1 million and, some extra people coming through helping out, but we're good. The biggest challenges has been me just slowing down. The biggest joy has been, again, spending so much time with my dad, even though he has dementia and diagnosed with major depression. Just spending, I'm just at awe that this is the man that gave birth to me, and now I'm able to take care of him.
Okay,
that's it.
Roxanne, right. Beautiful. Roxanne, are you?
So I had, I don't know if you guys got to address this question. Matthew Mentors asked, I have a friend whose mom is sick and won't allow home aides to help. It's draining her. Any advice to help her? And one of Donita's Benti circle participants said, send her to the Benti circle and the women will share suggestions. And I think that's a great one because how can someone who's not in that space understand it? They can help. So I just wanted to raise that question to you.
Difficult question, because ideally you want the primary care to come from family, because even when a relative has dementia, they have some familiarity with family.
Yeah.
And even if they don't remember family, even if they have forgotten who family is, over a period of time, I almost think that it's divine that they understand that I have a connection to this person,
right?
And this person means well.
It's in them,
right?
And they're like, they think that way.
Identifying home health aid people is very, very difficult. I was pretty lucky. You may have to go through you're going to definitely have to go through some folks, but that is a major challenge, trying to find home health care aides. But let me just say this, Roxanne and Richard, and to the loved ones that are listening.
Yeah.
So my dad was in a skilled nursing home in Baltimore for about 4 months because he had some severe medical challenges. Then he had to go to a facility. Had my dad stayed in the facility, and of course they wanted him to stay there because they was getting that bread, they was getting that money. They wanted him to stay there. Had he stayed in the facility, he would have died.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I share with people, if you can bring your relative home, you can probably extend their life by years, because what ends up happening is, in some facilities are better than others, they are warehousing elders. Like I would drive down every other day from DC to Baltimore to see my dad, and it would be folks in wheelchairs in the hallway. Nobody is talking to them.
Yeah.
They could be out there for like 5 or 6 hours. And so a lot of
they're
times
just together but separate, so it's not really
they
for them.
warehousing people. And a lot of times we think, well, we'll put the money together because they'll be better off in these facilities. I'm telling you that I know in my particular situation, and in many of the folks that I know, had my dad stayed in a secure space, he would have died years ago, because he came home to us. He came back home to us. He was around, my son was in college, so my son would be in and out of town. My baby girl, my youngest baby girl, hadn't left for college yet, so he was seeing her every day.
Yeah.
She was talking to him every day. Pop, how you doing? Pop, let's do this. Pop. So he hears his name.
Yeah.
Right, in a loving way. And then my wife, myself, and then periodically we would bring in, other relatives. The other thing is, he was getting home cooked meals.
Yeah.
Right. He wasn't getting cafeteria style food that you can't even recognize sometimes. So he was getting food, because I'm a cook. He would get I cook. He would get food prepared out of love. You're not going to get that when you put your family members in a secured nursing home.
Yeah. Roxanne, this word love comes up again.
No, because it
love
overcomes all of those things. And I think I remember we have a little carry out up the street, and the young lady that was serving me was so happy and joyous, and it was like, it made me feel good that the person that was doing my food was happy. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And I think we forget all those little things that go into our healing and just making us feel like a person, like someone saying, oh David, oh Richard, in a nice way, not, oh my gosh, you're pulling your thing out, you're getting out the bed and you're just supposed to sit down. And that makes such a big difference to their healing. So Miss Melissa Mimi Fanning said also that she has to do self-care, and she also said the aides have to develop trust before the parent will allow any assistance. So you could even get someone in the house, but unless they're there and they're acting kind to them, I think probably when you have Alzheimer's and you don't have your faculties, you're not going to trust someone if you don't feel like you can trust them. So they got to build that whole rapport. Andrea said, facts about extending their lives if you can bring them home.
Critical. I can't stress that enough. And I know part of it also is, Richard and Andrea and Roxana, in America, we've moved so far away from who we are as African people. See, white folks, their motto is, okay, if they get older, let's just put them in a facility. That tends not to be who we are as African people. I've been to villages. One of the villages that I support in the eastern region of Ghana, I've been blown away by how, you have all of these elders that are being cared for by children and parents in the rest of the village. That's the African way. That's the African mindset, that we take care of our family members. Now, there will be situations where we may have to put them in a home, but I think a lot of times what happens is we don't necessarily need to put them in a home. We put them in a home because we don't want to put our hopes and dreams and aspirations on the side to take care of our loved one.
Wow, wow, wow. That has to be repeated time and time again, man, because that's where we've landed.
Yeah.
You know, as a people, we have devalued and basically become indifferent to our very young, our children, and indifferent to our elderly.
Yeah.
And a people who become indifferent to the very young and to the mature adults in our community, man, are headed towards disaster. And so we've got to basically, you know, thank God for you and for Donita and her group and other groups like this, because there are other folks out there doing this kind of work right now. We got to bring these entities together, support them at the highest level, and have conversations about how do we return to our center where we're giving love, valuing our elderly, valuing our children, and making certain that their lives their needs are provided for on all levels. We only have a few more minutes, man. So I want you to share any parting comments, but I also want to say this to the audience. Again, the Black Men Health Alliance is sponsoring a very important convening for Black men and boys in late June, and I would be remiss if I didn't say to you all that President Purnell, David and David Miller are will be part of the facilitators at this convening that will be speaking primarily about our healing as men and young men in this society that, again, has been all about devaluing, demonizing, and disrespecting Black men and boys. So I hope that you all will pay attention to our website. As more information is posted on the website, you will be seeing flyers about the event. But this is the kind of work that this organization has been doing for years. It's in my opinion, a foundational organization that needs support. It needs you all donations. It also needs for everyone out there to understand that organizations like this and the work that we're doing, that David and his team are doing, and Donita, we need us to really lean in. And if you can't give money, give time. Can't give money, share your talents so that we can all move closer to, you know, our North Star or our promised land, as we talk about all the time. So David, in the parting few minutes that we have left, any thoughts, suggestions that you would like to share? By the way, before I go, David's topic, beautiful topic that he will be talking about is love, healing, reconciliation, and forgiveness. Optimal Black fatherhood, the new frontier. Think about that topic, you all. Love, healing, reconciliation, and forgiveness. Optimal Black fatherhood, the new frontier. And I don't want to read you the description. I want you to come and hear this brother talk about those. So again, I'm going to leave it there. David, any parting comments, brother, before we let you go, man?
So super quickly, just, you know, stay tuned for the book that Donita and I will be sending out information. We'll be soliciting folks for essays about the Black caregiving tradition, Black folks who are taking care of their parents, because again, for me, it's been a spiritual and an emotional ride being a primary caregiver for my father, and for Donita, her mother. And Donita and I have been friends way before any of this even happened to us. And so Lottie Dottie and everybody, the Black Mental Health Alliance is having their 2-day symposium on mental health, taking a deeper look at Black men and boys. And I'm real clear, unapologetic about it. This work with Black fathers is so critically important. I believe that engaging Black fathers at a deeper level could help us reduce 70% of the drama and the trauma that we're seeing in the Black community. And Richard, can I get 30 seconds to tell you a quick story?
Oh, yes, you can. Yes, sir.
I believe we could disrupt 70% of the drama and the trauma that is happening in our community, but we need to look at a family strengthening model. And in order to look at a family strengthening model, that includes a mom and a dad. Mom and dad don't necessarily have to be romantically involved, but they do have to have a healthy co-parenting relationship so that the child doesn't suffer. maybe about 5 years ago, Richard, Andrea, Roxanne. I know Richard has heard me tell the story. I get a chance to do some really interesting work, and I'll wrap this up in 6 seconds. Every Sunday, I would fly to Albany, New York. I would rent a car, and I would drive to a town called Kentucky. It is a prison town. This town in upstate New York is run solely by two prisons, Kentucky and Green, both maximum security prisons in Kentucky, New York. Myself and a team of folks were assigned to work with 40 young black males that were serving juvenile life sentences in the state of New York. Murder, attempted murder, rape, carjacking. Richard, Roxanne, Andrea, third day actually working with these young men. We were trying to get a better understanding of these young men, their family history, their childhood. Even though we were privy to some, to some records and some things prior, we wanted to try to build relationships with these young men and have conversations about their childhood. One of the activities that we had these young brothers participate in, they had to give their dad a grade. And that comes out of our dad curriculum. They had to give their dad a grade based on whether or not, A, if they thought their dad did an excellent job, all the way down to F if they thought that their dad had failed. When we introduced the activity, 3 of the young men became so angry, and they were beyond anger. They had reached the point of rage because we wanted to talk about just mentioning the word father and what kind of relationship you had with your father created a level of hostility, anger, and rage in the hearts and minds of these young men that the correctional staff had to come in, subdue these young men, handcuff them, and remove them from the room. Wow. What I will submit is that unless we address the family, the entire family, and historically, I think particularly in fields like social work, there's been so much emphasis on the mom that we've ignored the dad. If we don't focus, we think things are bad now. We have to focus greater energy on raising up the next generation of black boys who will be fathers. So we got to do that. We got to do that school-based prevention work, Richard. Some of the work that people like Bobby Marvin Holmes are doing, right? So we got to start reaching black boys when they're 8 and 9 years old, talking to them about what does it mean to be a husband? What does it mean to take a wife? We got to have them conversations at 8, right? But then at the same time, we got to do some recovery work with the men who've already been so scarred and deeply traumatized that they don't understand what authentic manhood is, authentic masculinity. They don't have a blueprint or a framework for how to become a father, even though they have children. If we do that, we stand a chance to reduce 70% of the drama in cities like Baltimore. We just had, 5 people shot in front of Lexington Market in the daytime. And we know that the assailant was who? A black male. In the city of Chicago, 48 people shot over the weekend. I would venture to say that in 98% of those shootings, it was a black male who pulled the trigger, and a lot of them brothers are fathers. So this men's work that has been so ignored by traditional systems, if we want to win, we want to focus greater energy on black men and black fathers. So June 27th, 28th, that's what we got to do. And if you don't want to do it, then
don't use my hashtag. Don't we can't say my hashtag.
You know what I want to say, Richard, but I
got so much.
What's your hashtag?
You don't want to know, Roxanne.
I don't want.
You want to
I've been
know, but we can't say
churches,
it.
mosques,
Okay.
yeah, you don't want to. You don't want to know. But this deep end men's work, y'all. Yeah. Our black men are dying at 38, at 40. And I'm not even talking about the homicide. I'm talking about the preventable health. My brother died at 55 years old. I've had at least 10 of my friends who didn't even reach their 50th birthday because of the stress of racism, poor diet, dealing, you know, as Richard always talks about, trying to make sense out of living in a society that is so fundamentally racist that our brothers are checking out.
Right. Right. And they feel like there's no one that they can't turn to anyone.
Right.
And so, you know, the highest, I mean, the increase in suicide ideation is one thing, but there's also an increase in suicide completion by Black men more than any other group. So again, David, you're right, and we've got to basically, you know, understand what time it is and roll up our sleeves and basically do this important work that so many are doing, but we've got to, you know, come together. We got to come together as we are trying our best to do to maintain, you know, our commitment to our community and our people. At the very beginning, you know, as you indicated in a text message I saw a few days ago, that if we start early, we have a chance, but we can't ignore and forget those who have lived, who are in the sunshine or the autumn of their lives. And that's what this conversation has been about at the very beginning, but we brought it full circle and talked about the need for Black men to really reach back and help young men, boys, and also each other. So we really, David, want to thank you. Glad to know that you and Darnita will be teaming up to write a very, very important book on caregiving. I know a couple of other folks that are in this space doing some important work, and we all need to basically have these and continue conversations about how do we really do this, what it takes to do this, because again, will be in a rude awakening if you wait to figure out how to care for a loved one or how to deal with these assisted living facilities in our communities, because they are not what they look like in other communities. I've been to both. And again, you don't want to necessarily leave a loved one in a assisted living facility where the folks are underpaid, devalued, and disrespected, because they're going to basically exact harm and hurt onto your loved ones. And we really should not want that to happen. So Roxana, I know we are coming up to another time for another guest. This has been all day. We want to thank you again, my sister,
definitely,
for your endurance. You know, this was not a sprint for you. This is all day, you know. And we want to thank you, and thank the Black Mental Health Alliance for having the courage and the tenacity, the desire to simply place in front of our community topics, issues, and individuals
and
doing this very important work.
Knowledge.
That's right. That's right. We've all learned from everybody who's been on this evening, and the beauty of this is that we can archive this. This is not something that you can go back and listen to this. David, it's been an honor, brother, as always, man, to be in your space. Love you very, very much. Love the work that you're doing. Love your work ethic. Know that there's more to come from you. And by the way, David had a son. His son graduated recently. Jihad is his son's name, from Florida A&M, HBCU, with a double degree, undergraduate and master's in 5 years. So that's a testament to what's going on in his home with his queen and his family in support of the children, knowing and understanding that fatherhood is at a minimum a 25-year commitment. And so those of you who don't understand that, it's at a minimum, I said minimum, a 25-year commitment. Bigger, we appreciate you, brother, for the work that you and your queen have been doing, all the work that you've been doing in the home, but also outside the home. That should not be undervalued. And we appreciate and honor you for that work, brother. So please stay safe, stay healthy, keep fishing, and David can cook you all too. David can cook. You know, so we want to hear from the chef, David Miller, David E. Miller. All we got to do is give him a call and write a check. Right, David?
Okay, quick before I run, let me also just say my baby girl got a full ride to North Carolina.
That's right. Talk about her.
She got a 4.0, so she's going to be going to law school in a couple of years. But again, that's another conversation. We got to start sending our kids to HBCUs.
Yeah.
That's another conversation.
That's another conversation. And Miss Andrea Brown, I know if you're on, thank you again for giving us the opportunity.
Yeah,
to bring
she
this
said
family
let her
to-
know if she can help you or Donita. Just let her know how she can help to support the book. And she also said, wow, congratulations.
That's right.
Thank you.
More conversations to come on this marathon. What's today? Wednesday. Marathon Wednesday. Okay. So Roxanne, who's coming up next? By the way, who's coming up next?
So at 8 we have Dr. Kenyatta, and she's from SAF Consulting. Her and Andrea will be talking about mental health and long COVID. So
Wow.
check back in a little. We'll be on live. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa, please email info@Black Mental Health Alliance. We have some, hopefully I don't knock over. We have some wellness boxes left from our youth summit. So I want to send you one for being such a great resource to us tonight. So Ms. Melissa Mimi, please email info@Black Mental Health Alliance and just let me know that you're one of the winners for the mental health, the wellness box, because we want to appreciate those people that hung out with us almost all day and have been interactive with us on the talks. So I got my bean bag, but we're going to take a little break, restart the live, because I'm trying to break them up so that way when I go to archive them and share them with everyone, they can be separated out by topic.
And quickly, lastly, if you want information on any of our guests, I'm certain that you can contact Roxana. She has all the contact information for all of our presenters, etc. Because again, we hope that you will contact them as well
and support their work. Yeah.
Okay. Take care, Roxana. It's always been a pleasure. I will be back on to hear some of the conversation with our next guest as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Be safe. Okay.
All right.